Hello and welcome back to our read through of the entire Bible in 2026. We are moving into week 13, the fourth week of March, and we are this week reading from 1 Samuel chapter 23 to 2 Samuel chapter 14. We're crossing that line between 1 and 2 Samuel. Now, where we left off, David was almost killed by Saul a couple of times, and so now he's living as a fugitive, he and his men living in caves, and Saul has actually just turned on the priests and killed some of the priests because they helped David. And while David is in hiding, he hears that the Philistines are attacking some of the cities nearby, and he decides, well, just because I'm in exile doesn't mean I can't fight for Israel. And so he goes and he starts fighting off the Philistines by himself without Saul knowing about it, and he saves a couple of cities. Now, Saul, when he hears that David has done this, he starts pursuing David, and he starts trying to hunt David down, and David's hiding in caves, and Saul comes into one of the very caves, not even realizing David was there. And while Saul is relieving himself, David cuts off a corner of Saul's garment to show that he had an opportunity to kill Saul and to take the crown of Israel for himself, and he refused it. David knows that he's going to be king of Israel, but he wants it on God's terms, not his own. Now, after this, after David reveals that he could have killed Saul but didn't, he does not go back with Saul. He remains in exile, and he starts actually doing the same sort of thing where he keeps rescuing Israelites from Philistines and from other people. He finds a woman who has a foolish husband, and the husband's foolery leads to his death, and David ends up marrying the widow, and this becomes Abigail, his wife. Saul finds David again, and David again spares Saul's life rather than killing him. And eventually, now that David sees that there's a pattern where even though time after time, he's had the chance to take the throne from Saul and he hasn't taken it, but Saul still hunts him, David then goes and he actually allies himself with one of the kings of the Philistines. Now, while he's doing this and the Philistines are invading Israel, what David is actually doing is he's not fighting against Israel. He's not fighting against the Philistines, but he's fighting against all the other peoples of the lands that are problematic, especially the Amalekites, who Saul failed to destroy, and the Ammonites and the people who are the desert raiders in the south. And so David is establishing what will become his kingdom and his borders while serving the Philistines. Now, towards the end of 1 Samuel, this leads up to this big point where there's going to be this big battle between the Philistines and Saul, and everyone's wondering whose side is David actually on. And so the Philistines kick him and his men out of the army. David and his men actually have to go all the way back down, and they find out that the Amalekite desert raiders have attacked their home that the Philistines gave them. And so then they go and pursue the Amalekites to destroy them. And meanwhile, Saul and Jonathan and all of Saul's family meets their end in battle against the Philistines. And Saul, not wishing to be taken captive by the Philistines, falls on his own sword to make sure that he is dead. Now, when David hears about this, he is, of course, very upset. He actually kills the messenger who, to be fair, tried to claim that he was the one who killed Saul, and David was not happy with that. But David becomes the king, first of the tribe of Judah, and then there's this small civil war between Judah and the rest of the tribes, and until Abner, who used to be Saul's chief general, joins David, and it works together, and they are able then to establish David as the king of Israel. And one of David's first things to do as the king of Israel is he then goes and he establishes his capital city at Jerusalem, which he has to take from the Jebusites. And once that happens, they go and they bring the Ark of the Covenant from where it had been sitting after the Philistines had it and didn't want it anymore to Jerusalem. And God makes a covenant with David that says, if you follow me all the years of your life, then I will always have one of your descendants on the throne of Israel. But God does not allow David to build him a temple at this time, but rather says, one of your sons will do it, because your hands have shed blood. And so David continues prepping everything for that temple. Now, as we get further into 2 Samuel, we see that while David tries to be a good man and a kind man, and he reaches out and basically adopts Jonathan's son, crippled son, Mephibosheth, it gets to the point where David gets a little bit too used to being a king rather than being a warrior. And when he sends his armies out to battle and stays behind, he catches the eye of Bathsheba while she is bathing. And he goes and he sins with her and then arranges for her husband to be killed. And it leads to a whole mess. And ever so after that, David has trouble after trouble after trouble. One of his sons rapes one of his daughters. The daughter's full-blooded brother, because he has multiple wives, so they were half-siblings, but her full-blooded brother, Absalom, then murders that son, Ammon. And then because Absalom is now a murderer, he has to flee until Joab, David's chief general, convinces David to allow him to come home. And David allows it. But things will only get worse from there, as we will see next week.